This is Mastering Your Wealth with David Gagnon, the podcast.
The stock market has been a large piece of conversation for many, and when the stock market's doing well, it seems like we always see this story pop up. You know, the one that says the number of 401k millionaires is at an all-time high. That is a phenomenal headline. Definitely catches you there. But we all have to remember something, that the number in your 401k isn't all yours. But to get the real number after taxes, you could probably take maybe 30% off the top there. So, David, let's talk about the impact of taxes on retirees. And most importantly, what can we do to limit the damage?
Jessica, that's exactly the framing that makes sense. The 401k balance is a pre-tax number. It's not a spendable number. So for many retirees, the goal is not to avoid taxes because that's unrealistic, but to control the taxes with good tax planning so you're financially tax efficient. And the tax code is very complicated. And so when you understand the tax code, then you understand the financial side of the industry, then you can align the two together to find that financial and tax efficiency so that you minimize and mitigate taxes into the future, not compound and defer them like most people tend to do. So here's what we do in real planning. We build a tax map of retirement, and what income comes from where will determine what types of brackets you might get into from a tax perspective. What causes more Social Security to become taxable? Because there's things we can do to plan to minimize taxes on Social Security if you understand the tax rules. And if people are making decisions and pulling money out of a tax inefficient resource and driving their tax and income up, they might end up paying more in their Medicare Part B premiums because there's an IRMA test, which is tied to income, that Medicare Part B premiums get more expensive when you earn and report higher income, whether you're single or joint. And when people are in those years of being on Medicare Part B and now they want to start doing Roth conversions, well, that's going to likely trigger a higher payment on your Medicare Part B. So you have to know there's always a cause and effect. And we want to always show folks that we can do long-range planning, mitigate taxes in the future, but there might be a little bit of pain today to put the tax diversification in place so it's got the right balance, so we have tax efficiency. So we engineer the sequence of withdrawals, too, when it comes into taking income. So there's all types of resources you might draw from that get taxed differently. So we want to make sure there's a good sequence of where we pull the money from and what type of tax you're going to pay. And there's also called sequence of returns risk. You know, what I find very frequently as people get into retirement, they haven't changed up their savings nest egg. So say, for instance, their 401k might still all be in the market in stocks or equity funds and bond funds. And if they're taking money and having to sell shares to make their paycheck every month on top of their Social Security, that might work okay while the markets are going up and your share prices are high. But when the markets start losing value, you have to sell off more shares. And that's where strategic income planning and investment strategizing is so important, because we can curtail that risk with the right investment plan and an income plan approach. And I teach this, you know, what does sequence of returns risk look like? Because it can derail a retirement very quickly if you don't truly understand what's going on. You know, so for example, I had a couple a little while back, and they had about 1.4 million in their traditional 401ks. And since they were over $1 million, they thought they were all set. They had plenty of liquidity. But when we modeled out the retirement, the biggest surprise they had was the taxes they were going to pay into the future years, especially later when they had to start taking the required minimum distributions at the age of 73, which pushed them into a higher tax bracket. And also the Medicare Part B premiums became more expensive. So what we did was we implemented a multi-year Roth conversion strategy in the earlier years before the RMDs were going to start. And then we coordinated with their Social Security start dates and other sources of taxable income that they had. So the result was they had a lower lifetime cost in their future taxes. We lowered the exposure of their Medicare Part B premiums being more costlier in their later retirement years. And they had flexibility when the markets were a little choppy. So we were able to really navigate and position their money in such a way that they weren't really exposed to the sequence of returns risk that we were just talking about. So the practical action items are to be tax diversified. Look at your Roth options, which are tax-free, taxable options, and pre-tax. You want to smooth out your income and the income tax spikes that you might have, and be proactive in your planning. And we can incorporate charitable planning strategies as well. So, like we always say, there's a lot of moving parts to this, and that's why I think it's to somebody's benefit to reach out to us to get a second opinion. Let us do that high-level review to see where you're vulnerable and where there are opportunities that you don't see that are in your blind spot to really make some improvements on your retirement planning and your investment strategies and your tax planning.
Yes, and as you mentioned here, this benefit of a second opinion is huge, guys. This can literally make or break your retirement. If you think you're on track, if you think you know your risk tolerance, you name it, this is where you check in and you get the real answer, so that if you're not, there's a gap somewhere, David can come in and say, hey, this is what we need to do. We need to do X, Y, and Z so we can get you to your retirement destination as soon as possible, what have you. For folks that want to come in, David, and they say, look, I'm just starting this retirement process, or hey, I've got a plan that, got a guy put together years ago, David. I'd love for you to take a look and see how you could help me. I want to ask two questions here. First of all, does it cost me any money to come and sit down with you? And do I have to bring all my statements? Do I have to bring my spouse? How does that work?
Well, obviously, I'm going to ask a lot of questions just to see what you like about what you're doing, what you're concerned about, what you're worried about. And the first thing we can do, and it's not going to cost anything for that first appointment or even the second or third, because what we'll do first off, just to let people put the toe in the water with us so we can show them what we do differently, we'll do a very comprehensive X-ray analysis of all their investments together to show them what kind of risk they're exposed to, whether they're in fact truly diversified, and whether in fact there are better opportunities to be in a position to lower that risk with strategic and proactive planning and increase their yields, which we almost in every single case are able to accomplish because we do things differently. We use proactive planning, institutional money management, and good tax planning aligned with that. So I think it's a good way for folks to see what can be done differently that they may not even know exist. Because if you want to get better results, you got to kind of look at things in a way of doing things differently and using different tools and strategies.
And again, if you'd like to come in for this portfolio X-ray analysis, it's going to be exactly what you're picturing, right? You go to get an X-ray, it shows you the bones, right, that below the surface. This X-ray is going to do the same thing with your retirement plan. It's going to go below the surface. It's going to tell you and show you how this big puzzle piece is being put together. Again, if you'd like to come in for this X-ray on that portfolio, give a call today. That's 203-872-0009, 203-872-0009. That website, masteringyourwealthradio.com. Now, if you are nearing retirement, you might look at your nice 401k balance and say, now what? This next step is critical. Here's financial author Jean Chatzky on Morningstar.
We did a great job at just banging the drum about the fact that people needed to max out, to pay themselves first, to contribute to their retirement account. What we did not do, what we're just starting to do, is to help people understand that they now have to reverse engineer the entire thing. They've got to take the money that they've accumulated and they've got to figure out how to turn it into a stream of income that's going to last as long as they do.
Wow. All right. So, David, that is a lot of information. I know our listeners are going, just tell me how I can basically replace my paycheck. How can you help us do this and keep it reliable?
Well, we do reverse engineer retirement exactly like she's describing, right? So what we want to do is start with the paycheck you need. And that's probably the hardest exercise I think people struggle with, is what they're spending their money on. Now, it's easy to come up with the bare necessities. You have your food and your energy cost and
Sure.
all the things that you pay every single month. But then you have a lifestyle spending. These are the things you spend to enjoy life, joining a country club or doing social activities, travel, all those things. And so we want to get up to a point where we know what your lifestyle spending is, or what you would like it to be. And so we break it down. We look at your bare necessities, what you need to cover there, and then we build income on top of that for your lifestyle. So step one is to really identify your income floor, your basic stuff. No matter what the market does, we want to make sure you have an income plan, a strategic income plan that's in place to cover all those bare necessities, no matter what happens. And that could include also out-of-pocket health care. And then we match the predictable sources to that floor, such as Social Security and pension. And if we still find a gap, we can fill that gap with more lifetime income with some other features and benefits possibly that could take care of some health care benefit needs. And so then we also have a plan portion for discretionary spending in the income plan. And that money would be invested differently. And that would be for times where you may want to take a vacation or you want to do something with the family. And so currently we're working with a husband and wife. They're both 64. They were nervous when they were going into retirement because they had always been growth investors all their life. And they didn't want to sell their stocks in a down year to pay the bills. And we were just talking about sequence of returns risk, which is a risk that they were aware of. So what we did is we created a strategic plan, and we designed it for that bare necessity of need or income. So one of them had a pension. They both have Social Security. There was a gap, and they wanted to fill that gap, so they were certain that they could always cover their needs. So we put together some guaranteed income. And then we also had a discretionary bucket of income spending. And then they had the growth side of their plan for future needs to offset inflation and also for legacy planning, for estate planning. And so we laid it all out in their own numbers. And here's the key. This is so important. If you know your numbers and you have a plan that you're working off of, you can see what type of decisions you're going to need to make for what your money needs to accomplish for you in the form of benefits and solutions. And this is where we take the confusion out, because we've been designing these plans for years. And everything keeps evolving and changing. And what's really nice about today's environment in the financial industry is there's some really unique alternative investments and tools and strategies that we use that people aren't really familiar with. Now, the wealthy people use these tools because they're working with the firms and the advisors that know how to implement this. And you don't need to have a $5 million minimum account balance with us to get access to this expertise and help. And so when we finished the plan design, it gave them validation that they could spend at the lifestyle spending that they had hoped for. And it wasn't a plan of hope. It was a plan of validation and analytics. And they were very comfortable. Now we really reduced financial anxiety in a significant way, because now they were working off of a plan, and their decisions become very easy when you do that. So the way we convert accounts into a paycheck is not by guessing. It's by building an income blueprint, coordinating your taxes, stress testing your numbers against inflation and downturns in the market, longevity, and out-of-pocket health care. And it's got to be a well-designed plan, just like when you build your home. If you're working off of a set of plans, a blueprint, you're probably going to end up with what you envisioned before you even started building the home.
For more details or to sit down with David for your complimentary financial GPS, visit masteringyourwealthradio.com.
Investment advisory services offered through Brookstone Wealth Advisors, LLC, BWA, a registered investment advisor and an affiliate of Brookstone Capital Management, LLC. BWA and First Financial Planners are independent of each other. Insurance products and services are not offered through BWA, but are offered and sold through individually licensed and appointed agents.
Information provided is not intended as tax or legal advice and should not be relied on as such. You are encouraged to seek tax or legal advice from an independent professional.
Any comments regarding safe and secure products and guaranteed income streams refer only to fixed insurance products. They do not refer in any way to securities or investment advisory products. Fixed insurance and annuity product guarantees are subject to the claims-paying ability of the issuing company and are not offered by Brookstone.
David Gagnon and First Financial Planners are not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency.
Registered investment advisors and investment advisor representatives act as fiduciaries for all of our investment management clients. We have an obligation to act in the best interests of our clients and to make full disclosure of any conflicts of interest. Please refer to our firm brochure, the ADV 2A Item 4, for additional information.